I decided we just need to start the show, man. We just had to start the show because we have a special guest on our show. We have Mitch is co-hosting this week. Always good to have him.
We're back, baby.
Come back in the studio, and so we're gonna actually just jump right into it and tell us who our guest is, Mitch.
This is Dan Dannenmueller.
Spell
Say that fast.
Yeah.
I'm not going to
Spell it 3 times fast.
Well, we already know my employees can't spell it.
Yeah, we know that.
Yes,
we do.
Dan Mueller.
Mueller.
Hey, get the address right. The rest of it falls in place.
It's a bunch of N's and M's. That's
my
the way we do it.
goodness.
Yeah.
Dan, hey, there's so much stuff you're involved in, and I know what it all is. Put it in order. You want us to hear it in?
Sure. Let's see. That's
You're
fishing, fishing, and yeah, something like that.
No, after we done fishing,
After we done,
that's when we done
that.
ate two buffet.
Yeah, we did eat two buffet.
We go as fortheth and eat two
we
buffet.
do. And then we got hooked on the crankbait.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No, we're here for a great camp, and this is a great show with Brad and our good friend Mitch. You know, I'm glad to be here for both of you guys to talk a little bit of crappie fishing.
Yeah,
and right here on beautiful Lake Washington. I mean,
Yeah,
what
and
a great fishery.
And you're professional crappie fisherman. And
Some days.
When you're catching them, right? Yeah. When you're catching them and you're getting a check, because you got a check in the last tournament.
I
saw that
2 days ago. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's good times and not so good times, but it's all fishing, so it's all fun.
Right.
So, but yes,
and you have Crappie Now.
I've got Crappie Now magazine and Catfish Now magazine as well.
Right.
Yep.
Big time social media presence and all those things, and going strong. And
you have any famous writers write for you?
I don't know if about that. There might be a Brad guy, or there might be a couple others like a Tim Huffman, or
Yeah, I heard
that's
him.
good. Tim's
I heard
good.
of him.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah.
Well, he might show up tomorrow.
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
like writes
quite a
fairly
bit of stuff.
well.
Well, he's got books all over
and
Amazon.
articles.
Yeah.
I've heard of him.
Yeah.
Let's get into the fishing because that's what they want to hear.
I caught
No more.
two. I caught 2 today. I went fortheth and caught 2 fish.
Dan, did you go out today or not?
I went out for a little
Lake
while.
Washington?
I scoped and looked and spider rigged with it as well, just to try them out. Tried different, went through colors and stuff like that. Found fish.
Okay.
Found big fish, and had 3 on, and I really didn't want to hook any today.
Right.
What I wanted to really do was just go out and find out what they were on, what color were they on, what position are they in right now with the water temp, find out what the water temp is. So I did some scoping and took a look around and found them. They're laying in the holes right now, the big fish. Now the small fish, they're all over the place.
They're just waiting on the sun coming out.
Yeah, they're waiting for the sun to come out.
Yep.
I think we get some sunshine, in the next day or two. Oh man, they're going to be up. I mean, there's some big. This lake has made a comeback. What I saw on the scope, Phil, if for those of you out there that have live scoped, and those of you who haven't, here's a little tip for you. If you see them if you got the grids just right on your screen for live scope, if you fill 1 to 2 of those with a fish, that's a big crappie. Right. And I saw multiples of those today.
Right.
That was wonderful to see those fish swimming around. Yep. And watch them to come up here, and I'm watching them while spider rig. I put that live scope on them and watch them. And they'll come up there, and those fish will turn around and come right up there to it. You're just waiting for them to come in there, so you just tip it. Right. And it spooks them.
Yeah.
She said,
they've seen that before.
And they leave you. And they just turn right back around. You see them just turn right around. This lake's going to be a really good lake in the next few days or next week or two. The water temp's up to about 56. It's getting right.
Right.
And so I spider rigged them today.
Yeah, and the reason why we snuck you in here was because you're starting to fish a lot with PICO crankbaits, and so
can you imagine that?
Yeah,
I never used crankbaits before, not at all.
So tell us about your how you started fishing with crankbaits and how you started saying like, this is the crankbait I want.
It goes by lake.
Okay.
Different lakes want either a figureeight crankbait, or they want a side to side, or they want a short bill or a long bill, depending on what you're doing. to me, the method I use, as far as long or short bill, doesn't matter to me anymore. It's the action of the bait that counts. And so what I do is I've been using offshore boards for now, I think 5 years, 6 years, and have gotten pretty good at it. And I use 2 different size boards, one with tidal flags, or in other words, the red or orange flags that you see on them.
Okay.
And their size is 12 inches, and therefore they're called Aurora 12s. And then we also use the smaller boards, which are better for crappie because they won't spook those shallow fish like we have in Washington. They get up in that top foot to 2 feet, and when that board comes over them, it'll spook them. So with a smaller board, it works better. And so we've got now these ones that are called the Aurora 36, and they're just a smaller board. They don't have a tattle flag or anything. When you get a big crappie on this thing, they disappear. They disappear. Yes. So what you do is you can put those out away from the boat, and they'll run as far out away from the boat as you want them to run. And so what's so handy about that is you don't have to use different length of rods. You don't have to use different varying lengths of line like you had to before, where you had to do 60 feet, to get your baits down. Yeah. And I use an app. It's called the Precision Trolling app.
Yep.
And I love that thing. They now have a whole segment on crappie in there, and all the crappie baits. And I believe yours is in there.
These are in there
PICO
too. Yep, they are.
And I told Mark to do that. And I'm supposed to do a show with Mark as well for 111 TV. And so I got into this, and I started using the app, and I got into trolling boards, and so then I got into different kinds of baits I want to use on those boards. Road runners. If I want jigs, I can use hair jigs. I can use bigger baits. I can use smaller baits. And I can use crankbaits. And when I came across Mitch's PICO baits, and actually, Brad, you introduced me to those originally, I think.
Probably.
And introduced me to Mitch. And I think that's how we met. And when I started running those crankbaits, I said, especially on the Ouachita River in Louisiana, I mean, I was placing, I made on Sardis Lake here in Mississippi, I made the championship. I made the cuts all the way to the top 25. And guess what I was pulling? PICO baits. And I had to follow the fish because they were migrating. They moved up to 3 to 4 miles in about 3 or 4 days on me. And I had to follow them. And what was happening was those fish were moving to the upper end of the creek, the river in that case. And I lost them when they went through the timber, and that's when the live scopers got them. But I was catching.
Was that fishing pressure pushing them, or are they running shad?
It was the time of the year it was, and those fish were making their yearly migration. So they started out in the not the lower end, but the middle part of the lake, and I found them day one about halfway down, and then on the third day of pre-fish, I found them up about another 2 or 3 miles. So I knew that I was limited on the amount of time before they got into the timber. And once they got into timber, I couldn't pull. I mean, there was just no way I could pull. They got in thick stuff. And that's when they whacked them up there in the upper end, but we still made the top 25. I think we finished 24th for the championship.
So there's
that was all done on PICO crankbaits.
Yeah, so there's a squarebill and there's a deeper diver, the INT. How do you know which one to use and when?
Okay, here's how I do it. I use what's called a tadpole. A tadpole is an offshore. I'll call it a weight, but it's a glider. It's going to look like a crankbait because of the shape of it, but it really has no movement or anything like a crankbait. All it does is glide down the bait. That means once you set the depth with your app, it tells you if you want to go 10 feet down, for example. In other words, you want to run this crankbait 10 feet down with that tadpole. I use a number 1 tadpole. Never use anything else but number 1. And what happened is I can control the depth by the line from the rod and reel to the tadpole. So for 10 feet down, it will take me about somewhere between from the tadpole to the bait, no more than about 10, 12 feet. Whereas if I did it without, how many feet do you think, Mitch, when you pull them like that?
75 to 90.
That's correct.
In there.
Yep. And I can pull 60 feet down on your lake. or in any other lake with those tadpoles.
Yeah.
And I'll do at least a third of the line that you would use with the conventional
I've used
method.
those over on Grenada a couple years ago.
Oh, they're perfect on Grenada.
And it's like you get what you get into here is just like you were saying. You've got all these different baits that are out there and everything. These baits have the same body. This has a long, fast dive and lip that gives it a tighter wobble.
Yeah.
And especially in the summertime, everything in the water's got it's ginned up pretty good. It's got a little bit tighter wobble.
That's right.
It's been drinking coffee.
They're going to want to.
So this is a bait that works well for that. It gets down quick, and like with your tadpole and everything, now you're fishing 15 or 20 foot line behind a tadpole, and you're running this. And I've watched guys that were really good at what they were doing over there with those offshores, and they can actually guide one of them into a surface school of shad and bust the shad up and then just set the hook.
That's right.
Because once they bust that shad up, that fish has got the bait. Now, the next thing to do, them fish get used to everything. That's why those boards work so good, because they're used to the boat.
Right.
But so they run away from your boat, and it's like, oh, hey, look, there's crankbaits out here.
It's out here.
Yeah, right.
Yay.
So now, and this is a bait that works really well down here, especially this time of year. Now we've got a bait. This has got a typical crankbait sound. It's got a knocker and a set of rattles in it. So it's got.
It's very. You can hear it even through the water.
You can. Now you've got a bait that doesn't have any rattles, but it does have a knocker. So when I was making these baits, I grew up wading in a creek, okay, and could run a stick into the weeds in the creek, and the crawdads would come out and run up in the shallow, and you catch them. You can use them for bait, okay. But one thing I remember as a kid is when them crawdads come out, they made this.
Oh yeah,
sound.
They do.
So now you've got some baits now that are running at the depth where crawdads live, and that's the noise they make now. Instead of going, they're going through the water. So it's not a noise that the fish is not used to. And now you have the same body with a different bill, and you actually change the action of it.
The action's what the part that...
Right.
So,
one of the guides out here told me that he can run these at 1 mile an hour and keep the action on them. Mm-hmm. Because they're such a wide wobble to start with.
Yeah.
And like I said, down there at Grenada with that setup, we had guys that had just put the tadpole on and hadn't even hooked the planer board up yet, and of course catching fish in a boat wake with it.
Oh wow!
By hand. Yeah,
wow.
It's an amazing little piece of equipment.
Yes,
man.
it is.
Yeah,
it is, and I love because the one thing depth is one of the things. But the action is the other one. I was talking about that action.
Right.
And Grenada is notorious for, if you don't use a figure-eight bait there, you're dead toast.
Explain what you're calling a
figure-eight is when they designed the crankbait originally, whoever it was, and there were several, when a bait goes through the water, the traditional method is this figure-eight because it's an 8. Mm-hmm. So it's wobbling like this. So many baits that you see on the market today do this as they're going through the water.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
It's a side-to-side wobble, and that's where your all of your baits that you can cast and run back real fast, they just wobble real fast like this. That's not this. Grenada, I have found, they want this.
Yeah.
And I think it's because of the color of the water.
At times of year, yeah.
And also the size of the food that they're eating.
You remember what Tommy did down there, though?
Oh, I do.
3 mile an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He came around me several times.
Yeah.
We called them, that was before I knew what they were, I called them mailboxes.
Right.
Because they looked like mailboxes going down the water.
It was.
But he ate them up. I mean, he was, because it was away from the boat. You didn't spook the fish.
That's right.
You could see them on the graph. They were parting the way away from the boat. So you could run them out. I've run boards 150 feet out on each side, so I'm covering 300 feet of water, and I tear them back.
Right.
And then I do them like on the Ouachita River in Louisiana. I mean, like James Calloway told me about up there, about using the baits and all that kind of stuff in some of those creeks. So I went down there, and we placed in the top 12 going down through there with the PICO baits.
Right.
And we did find there that this bait on some places in the river system, that's what they wanted with that action. And then we found some of them that wanted that action.
Exactly. The deeper diver compared to the square bill.
And it's just what I'll do if I'm going and I don't know for sure which one they're going to do best. With 8 rods, I'll split it up and I'll run
every other one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll try it, just to see which one they really want at that given time.
Right.
So tell us a little about how you're rigging up. What poles are you using? Line, reels? What are you doing?
New for this year. You're going to see them for when we take pictures and stuff on the water. Changed up. I'm now using a Okuma line counter reel.
Okay.
And they are awesome. They're so smooth, and the line counters are so good. And line counters are so important with this technique. I mean, with using crankbaits or whatever you're doing with that. So I've gone with it, and there's a brand new B&M pole out. It's called Sam Salty. It's a 7-foot 2-inch rod, and it's got, for those redfish and that, you got to have tip action, but the rest of it's got backbone in it, for when they make those runs.
Yep.
Great for crappie with boards.
Is that right?
So I've got them here to use them here. I'm now using those with 10-pound on my leader, 10-pound test line gamma line.
Okay.
And high vis won't hurt you because all that line's going to is to your tadpole.
Right.
And then I like to use clear line 8-pound test when I'm running from the tadpole to the bait.
Monofilament or
I usually use
fluorocarbon?
monofilament. It's monofilament.
Okay. Yeah.
Some people use fluorocarbon for floating baits. I don't really use it too much for crankbaits, but it will work. But you're not going to get that rise that much. I'm not going to get rise out of it. I found that when I do live scope and check out how deep these run on any crankbait that I've used, 1 foot from the tadpole to the bait, that's all I get out of a dive.
Right.
So whatever depth I set it at, I add +1, and that's how deep I'll be running. So if I find the fish at 12, I'll run baits at 8, 10, and 12, nothing deeper. So I'll run them above them a little further to see if they're active.
Right.
And then the mid-range, and then I'll come right at them.
Put it in their face.
But here's a tip that everybody out there needs to really pay attention to.
Okay.
I have found my success is almost like a turnaround of 60 to 70% better if I go with the current. So if I go with the current, and that means wind current too.
Right.
So if I go with the wind current and not against it, or if I go with it with current in the water due to flooding or river or whatever it is, I'll get better success if I go with that current, not against it.
Right.
Okay.
You seen that too, Mitch?
Yes, I have. That's a good tip.
Fish pointing into the current. Eating.
They're pointed into
the
it.
fish are looking into the current.
Yeah.
Their food's
They're going to see this coming.
Their food always washes downstream. That's where they expect it to come from.
And they spook if you run them from behind and you come behind that fish.
Right.
All they do is jet off. All you see them is on the scope. They'll just jet off.
Yep.
And so I saw some today out here where I came in behind them and didn't know it. They turned around. And they were big, so I didn't know which was which end. They were a big impression. So then all of a sudden he turned around. I could see the tail and I could see the head. It was a big crappie, and I hit him from the rear end, and it didn't work too well.
No.
That's because they got big crappie down here at Lake
got big
Washington,
crappie down
and
here.
in fact, all of Mississippi, which is the reason why the Mississippi Crappie Trail is a very popular.
Very good.
Has an app, has a website that you can go to, and you can find information on fishing for crappie down here. Everything, lodging, tackle stores, things like that, right?
Yeah, Matt Mulliken on our team, along with many others on the team, went through and developed the website based upon the vague description of what they wanted. I say vague because it became so much more than what they anticipated.
Right.
So it's got all this wonderful information and picking out a guide and picking a place to stay.
Sometimes what you want's not necessarily what you need, but after you find out you need it,
you'll find out later about it.
Then
you already paid for it.
Once you need it, then you really want it.
Like gas stations, what's ethanol? Ones that have non-ethanol gas for your boat. And,
right.
and no one has that. We have them on the website. So it's a great place to come plan your trip to Lake Washington, and the other 5 lakes in that trail. Right. So I'm going to give you one other tip about his PICOs and all of that. the way he's got them fine tuned, I've never had to tune one of these baits.
Right.
And I've seen that.
It's because of the way they're made.
Attention to detail.
All right.
And so many crankbaits you buy at any place out there, I won't name them, but a lot of them you get aren't tuned. So you have to tune them. And so, but these, I've never had them veer off to the left or veer off to the right. Out of the package, they come pre-tuned. One other thing I really like, and this is a tip for you out there that want to use crankbaits for pulling, pushing, because we can power push them too.
Right.
That's a different setup.
That's right.
But I can use a 0001 clip on these, and a clip is just where you're tying your line to a clip, and you open it up and put it through this little O-ring that's in the crankbait. Why do I do that?
So you can change colors quick.
That's one thing. The other thing is action.
It loosens it up.
It loosens it up.
Yep.
So I'm going to actually accelerate the capability of this crankbait and its action that's built into it by doing that. Bass guys do that.
Yeah. That's what I hear. That's what I hear. I may be the one who has caught the most fish on PICO crankbaits there are. I mean, I literally have crankbaits that I have wore out.
Oh yeah, I've got the first bait that got put in the Hall of Shame. I'm sorry, was one of the original ones that I sat down and painted 5 years ago now, and I sent it over to him. So he told me, "See what you think about this." Well, next day he's got pictures all over the internet, and then I didn't do anything but paint. So while I'm painting crankbaits, he's sending me all he's catching walleye, he's catching stripers, he's catching bass, he's catching more walleye. I'm talking walleye. He goes to other lakes, he's catching walleye, bass, crappie, you name it, on this one color. And then finally I get to stop painting for half a day, and I go down to go fishing with him, and he's like, "Bring me another one of them crankbaits. And give me the other one back." He had caught so many fish. It had 500 teeth marks in the top of that thing. Oh, my gosh. The hooks were mangled.
Oh, man.
They'd been bent and straightened and broke off and everything else.
That's those pliers getting them out of there.
Well, he finally had a walleye completely swallow one, and the only way he could save the bait and get it out, he busted the center deal. He spun it in the mold. Ruined the bait. That's why he wanted another.
Yeah.
So but that's the first one that ever made the Hall of Shame.
That's right.
So, what color?
I was going to ask you how you pick your colors. I mean, I know how I pick mine.
Yeah.
You know, and this is a multi-species bait.
It is. It'll catch anything.
It does.
But before they get too far, this is going to be tackle time. So you slide it in there. It's going to tackle time, PICO time.
All right.
Yep.
So you got 36 colors of these things, 2 sizes, 2 actions. Where do you start? Well, this is called geezer clown. Okay? We have this in both size baits, and I'm going to give you my tip. This is like rule number 2 in fishing. Fish don't have thumbs. They cannot tell what your bait is if they don't know what it is and it's this ugly. They got to put it in their mouth to find out what it is. So tip number 2, fish don't have thumbs. If he puts this in his mouth, the rest is up to you. And believe me, that is the strongest, hottest selling color we have right there. It has been for 3 straight years since I brought it out. We've got colors to kind of match when you've got bluegill hatches going on. We've got greens, we got blues, we got pinks, we got pink splatterbacks. I'm going to tell you, this time of year, if you're a bass guy and you're fishing rocks and stuff like where we come from, you cannot go wrong. Nothing. The only thing that likes peanut butter and jelly better than I do is a largemouth bass on rocks looking for crawdads. And I tell you, the crappie absolutely.
I'm going to tell you, I said
smoked this
like
thing. I built this for bass fishing, and I cannot supply the crappie fishermen with all they want. So obviously, a crappie likes peanut butter and jelly too. Now, this is one. This can be to a fish. It can look like a shad coming through, and crappie just smoke it. But I'm going to tell you what, if you had to go out there bass fishing tomorrow with all them little crappie moving in and out of them trees, what does a bass love more than anything?
Sizable crappie.
You know, I mean, he likes peanut butter and jelly, but man, for the main course, he likes crappie. And that right there looks like a crappie. So if you got trees full of crappie and you want to catch a bass, throw something in there that's a crappie, it'll fit in his mouth. That right there, spring and fall, is you just got to have it on a rod all the time. It's kind of like a topwater. That's my tip.
There you go. There you have it. PICO Lures. They sponsor Tackle Time.
36 colors on there.
If you want to find out more about them,
I know
of
about
course,
that because I bought them all.
Every one of them. Yeah.
you can go to PICOLures.com, and they also have soft plastics. They have all kinds of stuff for hard baits, soft baits. You can find that there. Dan, if they want to find out more about what you do and your social media and your company, where would they go?
First of all, go to Crappie Dan, Crappie Mates, and Dan Dannenmueller Sr. up there, and you'll find us on social media and all the channels.
All right.
And then go to CrappieNow and .com, both on the website and on social media. Check out all the stuff we've got up there. We've got everything. And so anything crappie, anything catfish now is up there as well. So go to our websites. And for the main company is KMSinc.com. So, go check us out. It's KMSinc.net. Sorry.
There you go.
Threw a curveball.
Yeah.
And too many comms in the other part.
Yep. So, your comms are messed up.
I was calmed out. So, anyway, thank you, Brad. Appreciate being on here.
There you have it. Always good to have Mitch on, so what can I say?
I'm going fishing now.
All I can say is, I always say at the end of the show, make sure you keep your hook sharp and your lures in the water.